Okay, starting with question 1. This question, excuse me, I'm still recovering from a cold. This question is inspired by this X post. I'm not going to read the X post, where Curt says, if you understand my work, you'd be far better prepared than most business schools to succeed in business. Can you elaborate on what parts of the work would be the most beneficial for being a successful entrepreneur?
I meant this in a context because I've said it quite often. I believe that the study of Austrian economics, which is basically behavioral economics, I believe that the study of that is central to one's development of understanding entrepreneurship. In other words, the understanding of incentives. I think my work emphasizes this maintains that emphasis on those sciences, on the methods of behavioral science, but that emphasizes how important truth and reciprocity are, and that truth, sovereignty, and reciprocity. And I found that over time, almost everyone who studies our work is more confident in speaking to customers and vendors and financiers because they develop what I would call clarity. And so you will not. This is the general one. So in general, I believe that understanding human incentives, understanding the sovereignty and reciprocity, puts you in a position where you're a knowledgeable informer and negotiator, or a skilled informer and negotiator. And that unlike certain spheres which emphasize deception, such as international politics or law, as practiced in the United States at least, you will be in a better position to positively influence the direction of your business. You will not make the mistakes most people make in building their business, and you will do what is most important, which is emphasize the satisfaction of a customer base that is self-perpetuating because you have done so by ethical means. Now, the part I'm not saying, and I suppose I should, is if you read The Millionaire Mind series, which I think came out in the 90s, is that when that came out, in the 2000s? The study of people who become wealthy consists of an insight in that most people who become wealthy as entrepreneurs, I'm not talking about financiers or anything like that, right? But as entrepreneurs, do so by moral and ethical, by being more moral and ethical than those they compete with. Essentially, it's a factor of low and long time preference, and that you're trying to build a reputation, because reputations are incredibly important in the filtering of potential customers to different companies, organizations, or individuals. So that's in other words, the development of skills that will lead you to the likelihood of developing wealth, right? The other part is not so much my work, it's more of the stoic and time preference work, which is that most people are most likely to achieve wealth if they take the long term, right? Take the long term strategy, and that they save and invest first.
In other words, pay your future self first.
You pay your future self first, and you limit your consumption. Now, for many people, this is hard because their work is so fucking boring that they need to use the proceeds of it to entertain themselves. The trick for an entrepreneur is to make your work so not boring that you would rather do it than spend money on sedation, right? Which is what most people do. The fact that you're in control of your life when you are an entrepreneur increases stress. It's actually harder, but it produces mindfulness, because you're gradually, if you do what I'm suggesting, you're gradually in control. Now, people like me, we don't really save money, so to speak. We put everything into the business, grow it as fast as possible, and then take a windfall at the end. In other words, but it's sort of like real estate. You don't get paid so much until you sell a house, right? Well, for an entrepreneur like me, I'm going to build a company, and I know that somewhere between 5 or 6 years, I'm going to sell that and get a windfall, right? That's right. It's just for me, it's easier to do that. And I basically save and invest the windfalls. I may do what I usually do, which is put some of that windfall out of my reach. And that means I use foreign investments. And then I take the rest of the money and I usually roll it into the next company. And that's because I have confidence that I can build companies. That's the sort of end point of how you should think about it. Not something I recommend for everyone. For everyone, I would say take the gradual approach, which works for most people. Um, uh, 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 I'm not saying, I mean, it's not like there aren't other guys like me. There are, but they tend to be people who come from entrepreneurial families, who have some sort of fallback mechanism, who can wait to have a windfall, right? That's a certain kind of person. And because we're from entrepreneurial families, we have a tradition of how all this works. So it's not a stressor, it's just how we grew up. Therefore, for most people, the strategy of paying yourself first, and investing, and then in using what's remaining to invest in the business to grow it at a rate you're comfortable and able to, that is the most likely way to become wealthy in America. There is no comparison. The second most likely way to become comfortable is simply the investment side, paying yourself first and investing. And then there are folks like me who are more risk tolerant, frankly, because we have more options. And of course, there is a class of people that once they have what's called fuck you money, right? They can take even different higher risk positions because they already have a backlog of money that they can rely on for their income. And that's where you see the wealthy, the hierarchy of wealthy guys, from angel investors to minor VCs to major VCs, right? That's where you go. You making money. You're making money by using your money effectively. So when I say you should study my work, it's mostly to prepare you to make those kind of decisions, which is to think about building your business as by understanding incentives. I've written other posts on business, specifically consulting business, but I haven't done that in any more of that in years. So I haven't really addressed it. At present, I'm largely focusing on how to build your how to get in the right headspace for being an entrepreneur. And I sometimes discuss how to hire A's over B's, B's over C's, C's over D's, what you can hire, how you have to manipulate that as you grow. And I sometimes discuss other things such as, uh, well, I don't want to get into it. I could go down this rat hole for quite a while. So studying my work will generally prepare you for thinking about how about the people who work for you and the people that you sell to more so than tricks. And I feel like though business school teaches a lot of tricks, I'm also concerned that business school, as I observe it today, lags more than technology in college lags.
Lags in teaching business practices?
Right. For example, I'm not so confident in the graduate school, the what do you call it, MBA degree, than I used to be. Because the MBA degree, as sold for actually since its large basic inception a couple of decades ago, it was predicated on the boomer growth um, presumption, which is over now, right? And it secondly was predicated on the post-war invention of marketing and advertising. And so with those customers, that capital and that advertising having shifted, I'm not so sure that what's being done there is as good. What I do like that they do is how they teach it, which is they teach by example. They start you with a company and work from there. I like that. So if you were to separate what I'm emphasizing, what they're emphasizing is, I'm trying to get sort of like how Luke does with Be a Good Human with the foundations. I'm trying to get executives to have the foundations that are most likely to produce organizations that are successful. Once you get to how do you actually practice marketing and finance, etc., whatever. I think once you have that foundation, you'll see those things without the boomer cladding, and then you can benefit from it. But as we know, uh, when I was in business, I had more opportunity to discuss this category of things. And now that we're so focused on politics and law and theory, I just don't write about it as much anymore. I don't write about relationships anymore either, right? I mean, whereas back in the 90s, I wrote about relationships all the time in early 2000s. All right, that's my answer.
All right. Shall we move to question 2?
So the AI tells me this. Say that your work equips entrepreneurs to build with radical clarity, design trust into every transaction, and lead with meritorious authority, and to innovate in real time while always anchoring decisions and narratives. In other words, it's making you to think with clarity about your business, right? In other words, what's the difference between thinking truthfully and with clarity? I mean, there isn't any.